His polling numbers show that Trump's approval rating has dropped to a low of 38%. This is according to a recent Reuters poll. It shows that his numbers are down 9 points since he took office. Nick, what's your take on this? And we know Donald Trump says that he ignores most of the polls.
Yeah, and rightfully so. They've missed for him in the past, but I think there is a little bit of a reason for concern, right? These numbers are lower than they were a month ago, lower than they were 2 months ago. But I don't know that there's any reason to necessarily think that the last 45 days, which have been obviously difficult for President Trump, are necessarily an indicator of what the next 45 days or what the electorate might look like in November of next year. And I think to an extent, Trump's been a little bit of a victim of his own success, right? There were three major issues that voters, when they went to the polls in November of 2024, had at the top of their minds when they voted for President Trump. Illegal immigration, the border is safer than it's been in generations. Crime, our cities are safer, and President Trump's been extremely aggressive tackling crime. Top of mind for everyone right now here in the States is the economy, inflation, and jobs. And I think that's a place where you're going to see President Trump spend a lot of time here over the next year making his case to the American people that he deserves to keep the Congress and keep the Senate, notwithstanding, the big wins on the world stage as well.
Esther, what do you make of the polling results? It's obviously going to be a bit of a difficult time for President Trump after he had to deal with the 40-something days of the government shutdown.
Of course. And I mean, the two things that this dissatisfaction in the polling is pointing to is obviously this debacle with Jeffrey Epstein and the files, who thought that at this point in his second term, the ghost of a dead pedophile would be what's causing him a headache. But that's one of them. And obviously with the Epstein files being released soon, now that they've passed through both houses, I think he can put that to rest. And I'm pretty sure most of it will be redacted anyways to not directly implicate anyone, because there will be all sorts of legal hurdles there. But the second point, and the biggest point, and it's why we're seeing the likes of Zohran Mamdani win in New York, is, like Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. It's people feeling like their purchasing power is actually getting further. Housing is the actual biggest concern that most voters are polling right now. And so between now and I would say June next year, the president has a real task to make people feel like they're getting a bang for their buck, to get stronger job numbers. We're actually waiting to see whether the impact on the tariffs, which is basically a giant rent-seeking operation around the world, is actually bearing any fruit. And so the next sort of 8 months are going to be critical in Trump's term, because that's basically going to make or break the narrative that's going to be set for the midterm elections. And if he loses either the House or the Senate, I think a lot of the agenda that he was hoping to implement following next November will basically be dead in the water.
Yeah, it's a crucial time. Look, there are reports that Ted Cruz is laying the groundwork for a 2028 presidential bid by leaning into his feud with Tucker Carlson and other issues that are tearing apart the MAGA movement. Now, Donald Trump was asked about Ted Cruz today.
There was some news this morning from an Axios report that Senator Ted Cruz was laying the groundwork for a potential 2028 presidential run. Could I get your reaction to, could you see yourself supporting Senator?
Well, he's a friend of mine. I mean, I haven't spoken to him about it. It's a little early. It's 3¼ years. That's a long time. But he's a very good guy. He's a very good friend of mine. You remember we had quite a campaign against Ted. And it worked out quite nicely. Let's see, where are we? Oh, we're in the other one. But I'm not that surprised to hear that.
Nick, what do you make of this? Of course, JD Vance is currently the front runner for 2028.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think President Trump's right. It is pretty far out for us to start, handicapping who his likely successor on the Republican side is going to be. I think J.D. Vance is the obvious front runner if the primary were held today. Another former foe, now ally, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is also someone whose name has been bandied about. D.C. as well. I mean, look, Ted Cruz has turned into a strong ally of the president. He's one of a number of really talented senators and governors that I think have a case to make to the American people. And I think, the beauty of the strength of the bench of the Republican Party right now is that, we're going to have a great process here in about 2 years to decide who the nominee is going to be. And there's a lot of credible candidates. And, unlike the Democrats over the last 2 cycles, I don't think, the Republicans are going to have to rig it to get someone who can be competitive in the general election in November.
Esther, what are your thoughts? I know 2028 is still a fair way away, but Ted Cruz apparently laying the groundwork.
Yeah, I mean, all these people that say it's a bit early, it's been on their minds since probably 2015. A lot of these people don't decide their runs sort of a year into an actual race. They decide it years in advance. However, Donald Trump's ability to play kingmaker, because that's basically what an endorsement from him would mean, is really riding on the next few years. If he becomes radioactive, if he becomes the poison of the Republican Party, then actually it might work in the favor of the next presidential hopeful to not have Donald Trump's endorsement. Again, a lot is riding on him meeting his election promises and the actual feel-good factor in the country. Of course, we know that he's done a spectacular job with the border and he really basically shut it down from day one. But there are still issues of crime, for example, in major cities. You can't just send the National Guard to every major city. You have to have long-standing cooperation with a lot of these Democrat-run cities so that people feel lasting change and the security that a rigorous law enforcement can bring. But also, and most importantly, it's the economy. So really the next year and a half, again, like I said, is very crucial, not just for the midterms, but also with Trump's ability to play kingmaker and for his endorsement to actually mean something.
We spoke earlier about how Elon has patched things up with Donald Trump, or it certainly appears that the two of them have, kissed and made up. However, Elon Musk has blasted woke singer Billie Eilish. Now, last month, Billie Eilish, who reportedly has a net worth of around $50 million and sells tickets to her show for around $200 to $400 each, told billionaires to give all their money away while accepting the Music Innovator Award.
Love you all, but there's a few people in here that have a lot more money than me. And if you're a billionaire, why are you a billionaire? No hate, but yeah, give your money away, shorties. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Now, the celebrity said this as Mark Zuckerberg was reportedly in the room, and Billie Eilish has ramped up her attack on billionaires. Earlier this week, she posted a series of messages on Instagram, appearing to really take aim at Elon Musk, of course, the wealthiest person in the world, accusing him of hoarding wealth and he should actually be using it to solve global problems. She claimed he could end world hunger, rebuild Gaza, XYZ. She continued, labeling him a pathetic coward. Now, Elon has hit right back, saying she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Esther, I think it's quite astonishing hearing this from celebrities. I mean, Billie Eilish, if she wanted to, she could be making all her concerts free. She could be giving away all of her millions.
Yes, a 23-year-old girl, singer, worth $50 million, who is making money off things like singing about birds of a feather, criticizing a man who has brought an infinite amount of wealth and job creation through his companies, and criticizing him for not giving all his wealth away is quite jarring. I imagine that thought process in her head probably looked like a monkey smashing two cymbals together and thinking that it was probably some great philosophical quote. But at the end of the day, these people are not to be taken seriously. And actually, I think Billie Eilish's statement really kind of signifies the decay and the slide into relevance of Hollywood. Because a few years ago, the news would have been all over this. Bernie Sanders would have been like, oh, yes, what a sage, and Billie Eilish. I think people just let celebrities talk now and treat them like toddlers having a bit of a rant, because it's just not serious anymore. Like, oh, you have a lot more money than me because you have $1 billion and I only have $50 million. Excuse me. That's about $49.5 million more dollars than 99% of planet Earth.
Absolutely.
What are you talking about?
Absolutely. And Nick, to pick up on Esther's point, I mean, look at the contributions that Elon Musk has made to the world. It's extraordinary. SpaceX, Starlink, electric vehicles, PayPal, all the job creation. I mean, perhaps we could be grateful to Elon Musk for his contributions.
Yeah, I mean, the critique from a singer who told the Rolling Stone a couple of years ago that she grew up poor because her parents couldn't afford to pay for her horseback riding lessons as a child is a little bit rich, right? But look, this is Hollywood. This is the left. It's the rich criticizing the uber rich, and this conversation about wealth redistribution. I think what is kind of sad in all this is Nicki Minaj has announced. I'm sorry, not Nicki Minaj. Billie Eilish has announced that she is donating a significant amount of money that she's made off of this most recent tour to charity. Unfortunately, it's to climate justice and reducing carbon pollution. But she should go up there and make the case for why these charitable investments make sense. And if she were to go out there and lead from the front and really make a case for helping people, I think people would take her a lot more seriously. But no, it's got to be from the negative perspective of, the jilted 50 millionaire who didn't get horseback riding lessons as a child, not from the perspective of someone who's actually done something to help.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Look, another popular figure among the left who also doesn't believe in billionaires and doesn't believe they should exist and is, of course, not a fan of capitalism is New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. And Tom Homan is warning that New York is going to be seeing a boost in ICE enforcement. He says that New Yorkers will see stepped-up federal immigration enforcement ahead of Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani taking office. Here he is.
But New York City, I plan on being in New York City in the near future. We're going to do operations in New York City. We know in New York City, me and Mayor Adams at one point had an agreement to let ICE into Rikers Island so we can arrest the public safety threats and the safety and security of that facility, but the city council shut it down. So we're going to be coming to New York City. We're already there now. I mean, teams are there now. But we will increase the enforcement presence in New York City, again, because they're a sanctuary city, and we know we have an issue there with public safety threats hitting the street.
Esther, can I get your reaction to this? I suspect plenty of New Yorkers that voted for Zohran Mamdani are not going to be happy.
Certainly not. I mean, watching that clip made me think that he sounded like he'd be a good fit in The Godfather, just kind of the way he was talking about this issue. But look, we know that New York City, like many sanctuary cities across the US, that talk a good game, but then balk at the idea of having to take in thousands of immigrants and put them up in hotels and run up local districts, housing bills. Obviously, they're clearly not very happy with it on the back end of things, but they have to put a good front. I suspect what Tom is actually trying to do is get in ahead of the game because based on what Zohran Mamdani campaigned on, you can see he will most likely try and aggravate efforts by ICE officials to arrest illegal immigrants in New York City, which is estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands, just like we've seen in other mainly Democrat-led cities like Chicago. So this is mainly, obviously, from a public safety perspective, because they're targeting mainly illegal criminals first before they go into illegal immigrants more broadly. And I'm not surprised by this. This is what happens when you kind of talk about supporting the, actually wanting to defund the police and replace them with 911 callers with social workers. And then when it's time for an election and people are balking at the idea, suddenly you support the police. Clearly, people can read between the lines. And I think Tom is trying to cover all his bases.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Nick, can I get your thoughts?
No, I think, you're 100% right. And the thing that I think is just astounding to me is the best way to keep ICE off of the streets of your city if you don't like immigration enforcement is to cooperate with ICE. And to the point that Homan made, if sanctuary cities would let federal law enforcement come in and arrest criminal illegal aliens from the safety of jails, courthouses, and prisons rather than letting them back out on the street, we wouldn't need these highly militarized ICE teams, swarming into cities and making arrests. If immigrations and customs enforcement agents could be confident that state and local law enforcement would back them up and help them should they need help, we wouldn't need to send hundreds or thousands of ICE agents and the National Guard into major American cities. So I think this is a brilliant move by Homan to put the marker down. ICE is going to do their job whether Mayor Mamdani likes it or not. And it's going to be kind of a question for the mayor and the city council of New York to decide, do they want to do it the easy way or the hard way? Because the feds aren't going anywhere.
100%. Look, finally, Nicki Minaj, who's of course known for her rap music, turned heads at the United Nations. The superstar used her platform to call out the world's failure to defend religious liberty. She's now backing President Trump's efforts to address violence against Christians in Nigeria. Let's just take a listen to what she said.
Faith is under attack in way too many places. In Nigeria, Christians are being targeted, driven from their homes, and killed. Churches have been burned. Families have been torn apart, and entire communities live in fear constantly, simply because of how they pray.
Credit to Nicki Minaj. Esther, why is Nicki Minaj one of the few celebrities actually speaking out on this issue?
Because surprisingly, she's one of the few celebrities with the moral compass. And she's picked up on a story that has been largely ignored by much of the Western media. I mean, this year alone, 7,000 Christians in Nigeria have been murdered. Since 2010, you had tens of thousands of churches that have been burnt or attacked. You have whole dioceses in certain parts of the country that are being brutally slaughtered on a daily basis. And for her to say this and to actually give credit to President Trump for highlighting this, you know, it's cost her, I believe, on recent estimates, 100,000 followers.
Wow.
But I think what she's gaining is a lot more, which is obviously putting attention on this critical issue. And you don't really hear about the persecution of Christians being taken that seriously. I mean, the number that we just heard quoted, 7,000 killed in Nigeria so far this year. That's the highest number of Christians killed anywhere in the world combined. So it's clearly a massive issue that's being carried out by Islamist groups like Boko Haram and Fulani herdsmen. And yet no one is speaking about it, because if you have to praise Donald Trump for actually, you know, bringing attention to this, you'd rather stay silent in the corridors of Hollywood and protect your fickle fan base than actually draw attention to a real crisis and a real tragedy.
I mean, what does it say about the 100,000 followers that stopped following Nicki Minaj when she was highlighting violence against Christians in Nigeria? I mean, Nick, what do you make of that?
I think it's unfortunately indicative of what we see on the left in a lot of these conversations these days. And for some reason, the left has decided that there's virtue in weakness. And because they perceive that Christians are in the majority in the Western world, they can't conceive that potentially Christians in Africa or, you know, Jews in the Middle East could potentially be the victims of their circumstance. So I give Nicki Minaj a ton of credit for speaking out. I hope she continues to do it. I hope she inspires others to speak out. But it's a really sad day when it takes, you know, a Hollywood rapper to speak out to bring light to something when, you know, there's a whole foreign policy establishment at the United Nations that exists theoretically to bring attention to situations just like this and put it to a stop.
Cygnal Principal and pollster Nick Weinstein and writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku, thank you both so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.